if you can go on that journey, the sooner in your life, the better. I know a lot of women who postpone this for, okay, after my educational years, after my career, after I have children, after I have grandchildren, or whatever, in whichever way we postpone this. And I would say, just go on this journey of self-discovery and identifying what is it that you want.
Hi, and welcome to the Women Making an Impact series. With me today is my guest, Shivangi Walke. I hope I've got your surname right. I have a little backstory to my conversation with my guest today. And that is, even before I came into starting my own business and getting into the coaching journey, I was inspired by the work that she's doing by creating the mentoring platform outside of your organization. And I was like, how do I get onto this? How do I, either get mentoring for myself or become a mentor? Maybe I have something to contribute. And that's why after following my guest for so long, maybe chasing her a little bit, today we sit down to have this conversation and she joins me all the way from Switzerland. Thank you so much for making the time and for your generosity in giving me this much time to have this conversation today, and welcome.
Thank you so much, Savita. It's a real delight to be able to speak to you, and we've spoken a little bit about your own journey. I'm usually not actually trying to not speak with you or something, just that this year has started, very busy, and I'm just trying to, pace myself, let's say. So that has taken you some chasing to get hold of, and thank you for your patience.
But just thank you for being here. I'm honored. And with that, I want to actually get into your journey. So let's start with share with us your journey so far. And then, of course, finally, we'll come to what led you to start Thrive with Mentoring.
So I'm of Indian origin. I'm a biomedical engineer. I have lived now in Switzerland for 20 years. TISS batch of 99 for those of you who follow those schooling terms. I have done most of my work in Switzerland in regional and global roles in the area of talent management and leadership development. So I've worked for 4 large corporates, and I had the privilege to actually be in these conversations around what helps somebody develop their potential and how do you actually succeed, how do you get promoted. I have also had the privilege to install formal mentoring programs in multiple organizations. And around 6 or 7 years back, I started my own journey. I stepped out of corporate. I set up my own leadership development and executive coaching practice. And 3 years back, I guess everything emerges, right? So it was not a brand new idea, but I think the timing was just correct for me around 3 years back when I decided to found Thrive with Mentoring. This is a platform that brings together senior mentors with around 15, 20 years of work experience with younger mentees, 10, 12 years of work experience in a mentoring relationship. And I brought actually my, expertise from having run these programs inside organizations to an external market. And I really believe it was an idea whose time had come. So yeah, it has proliferated in the meanwhile. We have lots of cities, 5 cities in India where we run this program. Of course, 4 cities in Switzerland, and we are in a few other countries and cities, soon going to the US. So it's been like an amazing journey. And what I'm most proud about is that Thrive is a nonprofit. And to date, we have influenced and worked and engaged with around 100 volunteers. So it's a real pleasure to be working with all these women who are so radically generous and who are really giving themselves, their time, their energy, their skill set to develop other women. So yeah, and the journey continues. In terms of my own career, I definitely believe that, Thrive was and remains my passion project. In my leadership work, I mainly work with senior corporate leaders, mainly with helping them to bring about their teams and aligning their teams to this new hybrid reality that we are working with. I do a couple of things. One of them is something called impactful virtual leadership. So I'm really helping leaders to remain impactful in the virtual space, because I know that for a lot of leaders, it's been very challenging to make that transition. And I also bring some award-winning trainings such as crucial conversations and influencer, etc., which are, mainly my clientele is in Switzerland for that. So that's my day job, and Thrive is my passion project.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. What made you start Thrive with mentoring? Because why I ask you is mentoring, like we were talking just before we got on the conversation, what does mentoring mean to you? Like, how do you define it? Because all of us have a different definition for mentoring. And was there like a catalyst to starting this? Or so what's the why behind mentoring and Thrive with mentoring?
Thanks for that question. And sometimes all these helping professions, when you are in that helping profession, it's very clear in your mind, what is mentoring, what is coaching,
Yeah.
what is counseling, what is therapy. For me, mentoring is an equal relationship with somebody who has the work experience and who has the life experience that can help you develop, right? And a lot of mentoring relationships tend to be over longer periods of time. With Thrive, it's a slightly different proposition because we have mixed, I would say, some of the elements of coaching, and we've got them into mentoring. So a Thrive mentoring relationship, at least the formal one, is only 6 months, right? And it is a formal program where you create a mentoring contract. You define as a mentee what are your goals. You define, how your mentor is going to help you meet those goals. What are those feedback mechanisms that you're going to use? How are you going to give each other feedback? Because the belief that I have is, even though the mentor has more work and life experience, there is a lot that the mentee can also bring to the relationship. And that has been now confirmed by hundreds and hundreds of mentors. We have catalyzed more than 1,000 one-to-one relationships in 7 different countries, in 30 different cities in the last 3 years. And that really makes me quite confident today to say that growth is on both sides. The nature of growth is different. In a mentoring relationship. Inside an organization, and this is where I would like to differentiate between a mentor and a sponsor, because there are, of course, people who will support you and your development inside an organization. These are the people who might, speak for you when you're not in the room. They might help you to get promoted. They might offer you strategic projects to work on. I think those are sponsors in an organization. Personally, my experience is having a mentor inside your organization is a bit more challenging, because for mentoring, I believe that the foundation is vulnerability. You should really feel this psychological safety to be able to share with your mentor whatever your challenges are. And by the nature of the relationship, if the mentor is a senior leader in your organization, more often than not, people are not very comfortable, right? They try to put their best foot forward. And of course, there can be some feedback conversations, etc., but it does not become a deeper transformational relationship. So I believe, and I think that's what we have been doing with Thrive, that we actually get you a mentor who's a senior leader, but who is not inside your organization. They're outside your organization, right? Now, how would I separate mentoring and coaching? I think it's not necessary to, really be, study psychology and get certified in various ways in which you will be handling a relationship, which I think is quite important if you're a coach, that you're able to work at that deeper level, right? Around 20% of Thrive mentors are coaches, are certified coaches. And of course, the nature of the relationship will differ as compared to somebody who is much more into mentoring. I guess one of the other important distinctions is that as a mentor, it's not only allowed, but you're also welcome to offer advice to your mentees. In a pure coaching relationship, I would stay away from offering advice. I would much more solicit the responses from, help the coachee to arrive at their own answers, right? Now, coaching skills can be used in mentoring, but as I said, mentoring would be about also offering your counsel and advice, inspiring, being a role model, teaching, sharing your network. It's a very broad broad, let's say, skill set and resources that you can bring to the mentoring relationship.
I love what you said, and especially the last thing that you said, sharing your network resonates, because I feel like a lot of mentors may not even know that that's also something that you enable in a mentoring relationship. So that brings me actually to my next question. Do women seek mentoring easily? And if not, what are some of the challenges they have around going out there and finding mentors, whether inside or outside?
Yeah, it's quite fascinating, right? Because now we have data points of thousands of women and what happens with mentoring. Um, the typical Thrive mentee is, somebody who has young children and somebody who's quite involved both in their corporate life, trying to climb the corporate ladder, and also, trying to balance their home life. And we have found out that these mentees, they tend to deprioritize, their own development. They postpone it. They think that this is not the most important thing for them at the moment because they're already handling so much. And the mentors, on the other hand, for them it has been very, very obvious why they should be mentoring and why more women need mentoring. So, funkily enough, every time we enter a new country or a new city, we always get more mentors signing up than mentees in the beginning, And so there is a whole aspect of education, awareness, and, I think it's really like a mindset shift, thinking that getting mentoring is a way for you to grow. Because as you said rightly, mentoring is also about networks and creating your social capital. It is also about working with your personal brand. There are just so many aspects that mentoring can can benefit you from. And still, I think a lot of the younger women that we encounter, they do not exactly understand the value of that, right? Because it doesn't usually, mentoring does not pay off in a very quick way. It's just like networking. It will pay off in some other way. It doesn't happen that A does something to B and B does something to A, right? It goes in a very roundabout way: A for B, B for C, C for D, and then maybe E does something for A. And over the time frame also, the time frame can change too. So it's really a matter of evolving and understanding how these pieces fit together, how they work together. I don't think that women do not necessarily seek mentoring. I feel that they just under prioritize it, and they do it if and when they are able to. They have done everything else. The other place where I see that they do seek mentoring, which I always say is a little bit late, is when they know they want to find a new job, something is not going on really well with the career. And then it's like, okay, then they start seeking networks and mentors and, etc. And I always say, the networking is a little bit like an SIP, the mutual fund systematic investment plan. You need to contribute into your network, even when things are working really well for you. And not, suddenly try to develop a network when things are not working for you. And I've seen now plenty of women fall into that trap because they under prioritize these things, which will pay off in the future. And then they wonder what happened. They're not working so much on their social capital. And I think mentoring can be a key way to work on that.
Absolutely. I love that you bring the comparison to networking, because, like nothing is instant and you have to invest first before you're able to take it out. And actually answered my next question, which is there a right time to get mentoring? And I guess the answer is like, is there a different answer? Like, should they have a few years of experience or not? If you can get it anytime.
So mentoring works at very different levels, right? There are lots of, at least internationally, and I'm sure that's the case even in India, lots of student mentoring programs, right? That you are in a MBA school or you're doing some higher studies and you are assigned a mentor, and the mentor will typically help you, even with your educational choices and first career choices, etc. So it can start fairly soon, I would say. There are youth mentoring programs. There are also mentoring programs which are based on race and gender. I mean, Thrive is in this, gender mentoring program. We have chosen that women should have at least 5 years of work experience to benefit from the sort of mentors that we attract to the platform. And the reason for that is we want you to have some life and work experience, having tried some of the things, right? I believe that earlier in your career, you can benefit a lot from getting trained and working on your functional and technical skills. With Thrive, the focus is much more on leadership skills and your growth as a leader and as a professional. So we really start our mentoring relationships with women who have at least 5 years work experience. Having said that, it does not mean, I would encourage everybody to get, as many mentors as possible and as soon as possible in their lives, in whichever format, right? Through a formal initiative like Thrive, but also informally, and make it much more regular. I also believe a lot in the concept of a board of mentors, that it's not one mentor that you have multiple mentors, and you really think about what are the strengths that this mentor is going to bring. As an entrepreneur today, I have an executive coach. I run my own coaching practice. I have a supervisor. I have a business mentor. It's quite different, right? The relationship is not about me and my leadership skills. The relationship is much more about how do I grow my business. So the skill sets and the mindsets that different mentors bring will be different. And I'm a convert in terms of knowing and living through this organization I have created, that mentoring can really be transformational. And I'm saying, I'm functioning as Thrive in the space of women to women mentoring, but that doesn't mean that I think that women should only get women mentors. Of course, women should have male mentors too, and men should have women mentors too. Everybody just brings a different perspective.
Awesome. Okay. So, let's say I don't have access to a formal mentoring program, and I know that I need like a mentor, and how does one go about? Is there like the right mentor? Is there a way to identify the mentor for you? Do you have some guidelines around that?
So maybe I'll answer your question in two ways, right? One is seeking formal mentorship when you do not have access to a formal program. And I know this happens in corporates. As I said, I have installed corporate mentoring programs where there was clearly a pyramid, right? So only a few people got mentoring from a few people.
Yeah.
However, we were also then making available the material which will allow you to reach out to somebody that you feel you might value from. For a lot of people, they are open. They might not, come forward and do everything that is typically then under the guidelines of a formal mentoring program, right? Because a formal mentoring program will work with things like having a clear mentoring contract, which clarifies the goals of the mentee. How is the mentor going to help? What are the feedback mechanisms? How's the organization going to support? Because even mentors need to be trained and upskilled, in terms of the work that they do, right? So all of that comes as a part of a formal initiative. But I would imagine that it's actually, getting out of your comfort zone, going to that person that you feel you can learn something about, following them a little bit like what you have done. You said you followed my work, you've been reading me, and you've been following me, then you reach out to me, right? I think it's an act of courage. It's something to, when you speak to somebody whom you don't know, you need to be really well prepared, and you need to say the why and the how, and then allow them, offer your mentor options, because it might be that they would, engage with you in for a limited period of time. It might be one conversation. It might be something that lasts over a couple of years and is infrequent, right? I think as human beings, we love having a choice. So if we are, if you are approaching a mentor, then I think allowing a choice, especially a senior mentor who may be, very, very busy and trying to balance a few things. I think it really helps if you study, what is it that you'd like to learn from them, and really be able to explain to them why this one-on-one relationship can be transformational. And also, can you bring something to them? Now this is something interesting, right? Because in terms of mentoring, the common thing to think about is that the mentor gives and the mentee receives. And I know this now from hundreds of women who are mentors with Thrive. And many of them are repeat mentors, and they know that they can also benefit, from this, because it allows them to have, access to another kind of relationship where there is no it allows them to give an opportunity to reinvent themselves, right? You can be a different kind of mentor for a different kind of mentee. Whereas if you're a manager or a leader in an organization, you come with your, all the biases that your team members might have about you, your peers might have about you. But in a mentoring relationship, you might also be able to experiment and reinvent yourself. That's something that is quite interesting, even from a mentor's point of view, right? So really think about, okay, so what are you going to bring to that relationship? Even though you're seeking mentoring, what might you be able to give?
Yeah, I hadn't even thought about this. Is such an interesting point, because I hadn't even thought about what you can give as a mentee, because we are, like you said, it's all about what can I get and what can I take. So it's a very interesting thought that you have shared, and I think it's a lot of value. And obviously, the mentor feels like they are also gaining in the relationship versus just one way that you are delivering. On that note, I'm actually going to go into your own career, right? What has really been like a game changer for you? Has it been mentoring? Has it been a couple of things around? It can't just be one thing always. What would you say has been a game changer for you in your own career?
Yeah. Well, for me, I think I have been fortunate and privileged in terms of being blissfully unaware about systemic biases, which is quite interesting, because of course, as an Indian woman working in a primarily white male dominated leadership organizations, I'm sure I've been at the receiving end of a lot of conscious and unconscious biases. But I must admit that my own journey to understand this systemic biases is quite new. When I was in my career, I was really unaware about this. So if I would not land a promotion where I thought, that I would be ready for it, I would never say, oh, there is a bias in the system and, this organization is not D&I friendly or anything. I would just say, okay, the person who got it, is maybe better positioned. So I think there is this whole element of awareness, that, and I know that there are plenty of men and women out there, who come from diverse backgrounds, who may not even be aware about biases, right? Because a lot of the biases, as we know, are at an unconscious level. These might be biases linked to, which school you came from and, what kind of function. All sorts of biases exist in the system, right? For example, a general manager in a pharmaceutical company typically has sales and marketing experience, or finance experience. You'll hardly find somebody who's only done HR to become a general manager of an organization, right? There are exceptions, but those biases, they're quite ingrained in a system. So I think even that awareness that you might be at the receiving end of bias then gives you the language and then gives you the possibility to have that conversation, right? Because you've been blind to that. So for me, I think that has been a journey over my career, that I have had mentors, both men and women, who have actually made me aware of my potential, who have helped me to sort of reach my potential, either through single conversations or through ongoing relationships, which have lasted pretty much my professional life, right? So that has really, contributed a lot. I also believe in executive coaching a lot. And for me personally, that has been really, really helpful. Again, as I said, I differentiate between these helping professions. I think mentoring has its own space and sponsoring does. And executive coaching is something, which has its own space too. And for me, coaching has been very transformational. I think that it really helped me to even make that, decision to transition from what could be considered as a fairly successful corporate path to even founding my own business, right? I think that transition, probably I wouldn't have done that if I was just left up to my own thinking patterns. As Einstein said, if you need to make a decision at another level of consciousness, it is not easy to do it from where you are. And I think that's where having a mentor and having a coach has really been a game changer for me. And last but not the least, I think one of the things, and I recently, well, not so recent, 3-4 years back, I pursued a master's in organization development, looking at systems, systemic thinking, gestalt, and complexity thinking. And I think that has been quite transformational in my worldview, the way, the lens through which I look at the world, because I think I became far more, let's say, aligned, not just cognitively. I think cognitively, I knew a lot of these concepts for a long time, but I think through my work that I have done in terms of my own personal development and personal growth, I really believe in interdependence. I really believe that every action that I take and everybody else takes impacts everybody else. And I think starting something like Thrive as a nonprofit is also a manifestation of that journey that I went on in terms of working on my levels of consciousness.
Yeah, I think so. I think when you start something, it changes so much about you as well. So, oh, thank you so much for sharing that. I just have 2 more questions before I let you go. I won't take a long time. One is, so I know I actually saw your article, which also said someone asked you, how do you do all this? How do you do as much as you do? So, how do you do, and what's a day in your life look like?
So I manage energy rather than managing time, right? So I think that has really the secret, if I can say that. I have, and again, I have created now an ecosystem for myself that works in that way, right? Because I believe that as an entrepreneur and as a business owner, being my own boss, I have the possibilities to manage, and decide what do I want to work on today and what would, give me energy tomorrow. So clearly, not being in a system where somebody else decides what you're going to do helps. But again, I feel that managing my energy really helps me to be creative, to be innovative, and to produce things from a space of joy rather than the shoulds, right? So recently, for example, I have started with a creative writing course, and that is at the confluence of Zen, Buddhism and writing, which I find completely fascinating. And given any spare moments, I mean, given a choice, I would just sit and write at the moment rather than doing anything else, because it's been such an act of liberation. And I mean, I've been writing for a while, right? But this sort of writing, creative writing, is different. I do a lot of business writing. I write a lot from a place of experience and what my teacher would say, ego. And I think that I'm shifting this way of writing and getting much more into creative writing, right? So again, I do not compartmentalize my life. I know that a lot of people will say that you compartmentalize, and this is your work time, and this is your creative time, and this is your family time. Personally, what has worked for me is that my life and my work, they flow into each other. And maybe that's just because of the nature of my work. I'm not producing widgets in a factory. So I know that the nature of that work is different. And but because I'm in the leadership space, I think that everything that I do, is interconnected. So even when I do a creative writing course, it is about becoming a better leader and helping others becoming a better leader. And how can I take from what am I learning with the space around ego and how writing does writing, to how as a leader you are a servant leader, and you are to be the best leader you need to be the best follower. So in my mind, everything is interconnected and interdependent, and probably that's why it looks as if I'm doing many different things, but actually I'm doing the same thing. It just manifests itself in many different ways.
Absolutely. I'm really liking the fact that you're doing this creative writing. It's giving me ideas, taking notes. And finally, before I let you go, what's your advice to women? Most of my audience, 80% of my audience, both on the podcast or on any of my social platforms, are women. What is your advice to women? And I ask this from the mentoring, the leadership kind of from that area. What is your advice to the women out here from your experience, life experience?
Right. I'm not sure if I'm in the position to advise a multitude of women. All I can do is to really share my experience. And my experience is that it's very important to understand what is it that gives me joy, what is it that gives me a sense of meaning and a sense of purpose, right? And it's very challenging sometimes for women to differentiate between what is it that I want to do and that gives me joy as compared to what do my children, what does my husband, what do my parents, what do my friends, what does my boss want to do, because there's so much noise in the system that we live in, right? There's so much noise of expectations and what good looks like and who is successful and how do we measure success. It's just so noisy, the environment, right? So I think my only advice would be try to find ways in which you can identify what is it that gives you joy, helps you to grow, helps you to feel really satisfied, and it doesn't need to be what everybody else's definition and answer for that is, right? And on that, if you can go on that journey, the sooner in your life the better. I know a lot of women who postpone this for, okay, after my educational years, after my career, after I have children, after I have grandchildren, whatever, in whichever way we postpone this. And I would say, just go on this journey of self-discovery and identifying what is it that you want in whichever, with whatever tools and resources you have, mentoring being one of them, coaching, leadership development, having conversations, open conversations with friends, the strength of community, right? I'm a part of various women groups and communities where women openly share around, what are their challenges? What is it that is bothering them? And it's fascinating then when you hear that from another woman and you're like, wow, I thought I was the only one who thought like that, right? But when women openly share their dilemmas and share their stories, I think that can be also super useful, right? For you to identify, okay, is this something for me? And am I also caught in the same rut? So yeah, a journey of self-discovery, sooner the better, is what I would encourage every woman to do.
So beautifully articulated. I can listen to you for a long time now, but I know that I would be eating into your time. So thank you so very much for sharing everything you have. I think personally also, I have so many takeaways from this conversation, and I look forward to following you on your journey, staying connected, and all the very best to you, Shivangi. I hope we're going to have many more countries thrive with mentoring is all over the globe, and all the best to you, and thank you so much for your time.